Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Beyond the Production, Opera San Antonio's live interview series, where we take artists off the stage and into the community to share their experiences in the operatic arts. As you all know, my name is Lauren Meeker, and I am the General and Artistic Director of Opera San Antonio. And joining me, as always, is my partner in crime, Francesco Miliotto, Opera San Antonio's Music Director. Good day, sir.
How are you, Lauren?
I am excellent, Francesco. How are you?
I'm doing great in sunny, hot, beautiful Atlanta.
Yes. Francesco, we should talk about this today just a little bit. We're starting to see opera companies open back up. You're in Atlanta. What are you currently doing there?
I'm conducting Three Penny Opera for the Atlanta Opera. It's my debut down here. It's my first time in Atlanta, and I absolutely love it. Love the company, and we're having just a really good time. But most importantly, and most profoundly, it's just incredible to be back in a room. Yeah. Doing opera, being in rehearsals, seeing most of people's faces as we wear masks in rehearsals and we distance and everything, but just having the collaboration and having the sound around you is just incredible. Incredible.
Welcome back, opera companies. Yay. Yay. So for those of you who are watching today, I want to thank you, whether you're joining us live or if you're watching the interview later on the OSA YouTube channel or Facebook page. So everybody knows all of these interviews from this series can be found on YouTube under the Beyond the Production playlist. You can also head to our website under the Opera Now tab, and you'll find our full series of interviews there. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest today. That was my terrible having fun in the moment accent.
Love it.
We're going to introduce our fabulous guest today. This is the wonderful and talented Katy Tucker, our projection designer for Lucia. Katy!
Hey! Hi, everybody.
Hi, we're so thrilled that you're here.
I'm so excited to be here with you virtually.
Fabulous. So we were just very excited to have Francesco speaking about going back into live performance at Atlanta. What we're using this series here to do in the next month and change is to show what we are doing and getting ready for here at Opera San Antonio, which is us going back into live performance with a reduced concert staging of Lucia. It's only 90 minutes. So if you haven't seen Lucia before, if you've never experienced an opera before, this is the one to try, 100%. I'm going to interrupt really quickly because Michael Rice, who I know and love, is saying opera now. And Michael Rice, this is purely a tab on the Opera San Antonio website that just catalogs where all of our activities have been since the pandemic. I think you're asking because you maybe have a podcast of the same title, which didn't occur to me till just now. I will look at Michael Rice. If I stole from you, I didn't mean to, and I will rectify that. Anyway, Michael's brilliant. Also, we have some fabulous guests joining us, like Sue Turner, who is one of our constant companions and biggest supporters here, is saying hello over on YouTube.
Hi, Sue.
And Veronica, who's our artistic administrator, just said, "Ooh, I love Three Penny Opera." So yay, Francesco, for all the work you're doing.
Come out and see it, Veronica.
Yeah. No, she can't. She's here working.
I know. She has to work. I know.
At any rate, what we want to talk about today and that we're here to help give the inside scoop on is this 90-minute semi-stage Lucia, which we will have performances of on May 6th and May 8th. So I encourage everyone, whether you're learning about things that you hear in the show today, or if you want to learn more even than we talk about in terms of Lucia or Donizetti or the piece itself, please head to our website, operasa.org, and you will see tons more info. So, Katy, welcome to the show today. We are so super excited to have you here with us.
Yes.
Francesco, We always start with a phenomenal guest favorite question. I'm going to let you take it away.
Well, thank you, Katie.
Yes, my show.
My favorite question, and the question that Lauren allows me to ask at the beginning of every interview, is what was your first inspiration, your first inspiring moment, the thing that you remember most that helped push you into the arts? Let's just say it doesn't need to be exactly what you're doing now, but what is one of those first moments from your childhood or whenever that inspired you to get to where you are today, that started the road, shall we say?
Well, I think my very first, this is not necessarily what got me into it, but I think it's a kind of funny story. It was my first theatrical show that I saw, or that I remember. My parents took me. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, Louisville.
Okay.
If I need to translate.
Louisville, got it.
Louisville.
Now I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Before that wasn't clear.
No.
So they took me to New York City, the big city, to see Cats on Broadway.
Oh boy.
And I was like 8 years old or something. And, we're like sitting down. We're so excited. Going to see my first Broadway show. And then I really had to go to the restroom. And so I got up, and as I got up, the lights went down and all of the cats started parading down the aisles. And so I was caught on the spotlight. So I made my first stage debut going to the restroom at Cats.
Fantastic.
And after that, I like a lot of young people fell in love with Andrew Lloyd Webber and wrote letters to him, and his assistant would write me back. And
wow.
Now, Katie.
What? Am I kidding?
Yeah. Did you write letters?
Oh, yeah. I was a total fangirl.
And his assistant wrote you back?
I guess I was.
You have to tell me what one of those letters was like.
Okay, well, I was rambling
you're like 8 or 9
about,
or 10 or whatever, right?
Yeah, little geek. I played piano. I played piano.
There you go. Yeah, I understand. Air quotes, I get it now.
Talentless.
Piano quotes, got it.
Played piano, and I guess I wrote to him about my piano playing and all that, and he was the assistant was really encouraging and told me to keep it up, and they were really lovely and sweet. So Broadway was my little dream.
We have so much to unpack now. So much to unpack. Okay, so it sounds like if you're going to Cats and you're playing the piano, your family's giving you some artistic influences pretty early on. So
absolutely.
When you're even young or headed into elementary school, let's say, what were you being exposed to, and how was the arts a part of your life?
Yeah, they were always a huge part of my life. My mom and I would go the third Sunday of every month to the Broadway series at the Kentucky Center for the Performing Arts. Shout out Broadway series.
Great.
And so that was our little Sunday ritual, and we'd go see the shows, and then we would fangirl out at the stage door to try to meet the people. I met Ralph Macchio when he was in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying.
Oh my God.
And B. Arthur. So we saw a lot of theater, and then I was really into visual art. I had learned pretty early on in a series of church plays that I was not destined for the stage.
Does that mean you were in them trying to act?
Yeah.
It was not true. Okay. We all have.
I remember my first lines too. Stop it. All of you, stop it. Yeah. But I was terrible. But I was really into art, and again, I have a really awesome mom who I don't think is watching, but I promise she's supportive. But she would just encourage me to make stuff, and I was sort of also talentless in my art classes, and that everything I would make didn't really look like what it was supposed to be, but it was early abstraction. And so the teachers were oh, Katie's really coming along, she's really talented. And my mom was is she? They're no, she is. So she was helping foster that, and would take me to construction sites so I could get materials to make sculptures. And, my parents' garage and backyard was my workshop where I made all kinds of stuff, and started to get interested in set design. It started to lead me to where I am today, skipping over many steps.
So where does it go? Are you in middle school or high school? Where does it go where it stops being, where the arts stop being something that you're experiencing and playing with and start becoming something that your brain goes, okay, I think I want to focus on this. Like, what did you end up going to college for and where?
Yeah. So in high school, I got really into painting and kind of figured out that I actually wasn't so bad at it and, you know, had something visually to say. And then I went to college at a school in Ohio called Kenyon College. I really actually wanted to go to art school, but I also wanted to play tennis in college. So I had to go to a liberal arts school where I could kind of do both.
Oh, wow.
But at Kenyon, I started taking video art classes. You know, I'd gone in thinking I would be a painter.
Right.
Okay.
And also throughout college, I would go to New York and assist different artists. But through my professor, I got really into video art, and I found out I had a lot more to say using video as a medium rather than painting. So yeah.
Wow.
So what
but I
was
didn't. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. You.
Oh, I was just gonna say, but I didn't really know that video and theater sort of connected until after college when I interned at the Met. But,
so when you're in school and you're studying video art, what does your brain think you're going to do with this? You know, like people used to say to me, when you graduate from college, I'm like, I don't know, I'll like move to New York or move to Chicago and maybe I'll like hoof it and lean on family contacts. What did you see as your trajectory and when did that change? Because you just dropped a big, huge nugget of awesomeness, which is intern at the Met. So bridge that gap for us, Katy.
Yeah. So I thought I was going to be a video installation artist, but also like very uncertain about how I would make a living doing that, even though I did assist a video installation artist who did make a living and was very successful. But, you know, that's like a very rare occurrence. So going back to growing up, I'd always loved theater. And I was sort of like, maybe there's something I can do with video and theater. And so I did an internship at the Met after college. And while I was there, I actually met Francesca Zambello, who, you know, is a wonderful director and very much my mentor. And she was really nice and was like, you know, I was just making copies and like setting up tech tables or helping set up tech tables. And she was nice enough to say, you know, who are you? What do you want to do? And I was like, oh, I'm Katy. Like, I want to do something with video and opera. And she was like, oh, you want to be a projection designer? And I was like, I do. And so she was actually literally the person that told me about what I'm doing and kind of set me on that path. Yeah.
Wow.
So I know, I mean, I met you through Francesca. I know you're still a major collaborator that she works with to this day. Talk a little bit about what those first early experiences were like. So you discover Francesca, you discover projection design. How does your brain then begin to transition into that world of opera?
Yeah, I mean, I think I largely, so I didn't know much about opera growing up. My parents weren't fans. We didn't go see it. But at the Met, you know, one of the privileges of being an intern is that you get to sit in the theater and watch all of the shows. You get to watch the tech process. So at that point, I really started falling in love with it. And I think what I loved about opera was just sort of, you know, video can be something that can distract you from a production, but opera the music is so commanding and it can sort of support something like video and not have it detract from the experience. And I think that's sort of how I got into it. And then additionally, you know, Francesca introduced me to a woman that I assisted. And so she did a fair amount of opera too. So I was exposed to the process by working for her. And then, you know, you just sort of like meet people and work with them. And I just sort of stayed in the opera web largely, just from my early introduction to Francesca probably. But yeah, I think it's just opera is just such a like powerful art form that really video has a strong place for it. And I always loved music. And the only way I could express myself musically, certainly not playing piano, was through video.
Right.
So it was really like a nice kind of marriage.
Katy, let me back you up a step, because what that says to me is there's a mental leap that you made at some point. between discovering video art and potentially thinking about installations, but then all of a sudden you're doing an internship at the Met. So for someone who didn't grow up with opera, how did you even get that particular opportunity? What led you into opera and the Met?
I knew I wanted to go to New York.
Okay.
And I think it was sort of just luck. I was like looking on one of those sites like Art Search or something.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I knew I didn't know anything. I mean, I left off, I did do a year of being a scenic art intern at Actors Theater of Louisville. I wanted to do the set design internship and I didn't get it. So I did the scenic art. So I spent a year being a scenic artist, and I have a lot of respect for that field. It was just not something I wanted to do. And so, yeah, then I was sort of like, okay, theater's neat. I found the Met. I was like, I knew I wanted to move to New York City. So I was like, okay, I'll try this. And they were nice enough to hire me.
That's fantastic.
I love how those seemingly disparate but slightly connected threads can sometimes just push and pull you in the direction that you're meant to go in without even knowing it.
Totally.
I have a question. I really, this to me, I think is very interesting. So how did all of your past drawing, scenic designing things, all of that? So because that's a bigger scope of encompassing the entire stage-ish and like video art. How does all of those past experiences, like all of that stuff, inform your style or your taste, you know what I mean? Your voice of all of that, because I'm imagining that it's not just like, you know, clips of video of things that you do, but I can imagine that it's more sort of, I don't know, something that is connected to all of that. How would you describe it, and how would you describe that it developed into sort of the voice, the visual voice, the eye, let's say, of Katy Tucker?
Way to work that in there.
Love it.
That's a really good question. I think to this day, like I still think of myself as a visual artist. You know, I would still say when I grow up, I still want to be an artist. I mean, I guess I am sort of one, but like,
me too.
You know, yeah. And it's like, when I approach any production, I always go back to the artists that I've been interested in. And most of them are still painters, like, you know, Alberto Giacometti or Jim Dine. These people that I loved and studied that were figurative painters are still the ones I go back and look to for ideas, or depending on what the show is, like I'll go and look at German expressionists and be like, oh, it feels, you know, to me, it sounds sort of like this looks. So there's a lot of this connection of like the sounds, the music always reminds me of something visual. And then I kind of go back to like my place of comfort, which is fine art, to kind of draw from those, sort of those interests and that research. And that's sort of how I then get back to theater.
Do you draw storyboard stuff? Do you like actually draw out what you normally do for all of
I used to.
But
what?
You should ask that. It's a great segue, Francesca.
Just asking. I don't know.
I used to draw them. I will say that my skills like the one benefit of this pandemic is that I kind of suddenly had time in my schedule. And so I got back into painting and drawing.
Cool.
Until I got busy again. But I've lost a lot of those skills. I mean, you really do like kind of lose it if you don't use it.
Right.
So I'm a lot slower now hand drawing storyboards and stuff than I am doing it digitally. But I do like a lot of times approach a project by trying to use like a digital tablet, you know, to draw stuff. I do always try to find a way to bring it back in, but sometimes it's just to go from something that's like more manual and then importing it into the computer where I actually will make the stuff adds a lot of time to the process, but I always want to do that.
Wow.
You know?
So what we thought we would do today, and Francesco, I'm super curious to have your questions as we go on this journey, because it's a process that Katy and I have now done several times together while working together, but not everybody knows what goes on behind the scenes when it comes to any one design element.
No.
Or in this case, specifically projection design in Katy's territory. So we're going to show some examples and talk through some of that process today, and give everybody the inside scoop on how this tends to come together, at least when Katy and I are working together. Mm-hmm. So Katy, I'm going to say that I am simultaneously a collaborator and a micromanager.
I would never call you that.
Yeah, okay. However, I think what those two things do, and feel free to call me out, what those two things do is really ideally set a team up to have in-depth conversations right at the front that are analyzing the piece, both in its, traditional concept, but also looking at ways to resonate with a modern audience, and working as a group to figure out what the storytelling visual devices are that we want to make a project come to life at any time. Does that, have I accurately described myself, Katy?
Yes, but I would like to add that while I like to tease you about being a micromanager, very few people are ever as prepared as Lauren Meeker is. You really are absolutely amazing at doing your homework and really clearly communicating with your teams what you want, because you can just do anything with a production, right? And I feel like you always have a strong point of view that still simultaneously feels very collaborative, but also like direct. So even though I like to tease you about your organization, I think you are exquisitely talented with your research, direction, and ideas.
Talented. That's going.
I second that. Oh my God.
I love it. Okay. So what I thought I would do to help guide this process, and Francesco, for you and our viewers to show what this is like, I'm going to actually pull up, and this is, how shall we say, it brings up heartfelt, warm memories and sadness at the same time. This is where we started some research for Don Giovanni, which is, and actually I should go to the first slide, not the second one. I don't know why my computer did that. But this is actually the last show that Katy and I had done before the pandemic started. They made it almost all the way through performances, but not quite a year ago, almost to today.
Right.
And so I pulled this storyboard up for us to be able to go through so that folks can see a little bit about what the beginning of this particular process was like. And we'll use that in reference going forward. So here you can see, as I go to the next slide, and Katy, we should talk a little bit about the specificity of this production and what led even to these images. But there you see Francesco, she's already pulling from artwork.
Yeah.
So when we were talking about Don Giovanni, I'll give a little bit of the backstory vision, and then Katy, you can explain these images. We were very interested in what I was suggesting for a viewpoint on the production, which was, let's treat everything a victim, male or female, of Giovanni says about their experience with him as truth. So, we were leaning heavily into ideologies that were coming out of the Me Too movement, and, how do you listen to victims versus their aggressors? And I just said, okay, I've done Giovanni a number of ways. I've taken a number of different tactics, but what if if somebody says, Don Giovanni did this to me, it's what happened. And so that birthed an idea for how to let his victims really have a voice and a look and a consistency throughout the evening, which ultimately resulted in not only the directorial style, but the design style, and also how we characterize people. So with that big picture concept, Katy, talk a little bit about this artwork and these images.
Yeah, so building on what Lauren said, I was immediately thinking of, a lot of these aren't abstract expressionists, but it made me think of abstract expressionism, which is like, well, first of all, it was like a very male-dominated art movement, and it was what was built around also like the U.S. becoming successful after World War II, and it was a lot of like emotion and recovery and stuff shown through abstracted styles. Mm-hmm. And then I also was incorporating some of the imagery of mostly women. I mean, most of these are women, but like just seeing their figures sort of rendered through so much like pain and chaos around them. And that was same with like some of these abstracted styles, is that like, yes, you have like an accusation or something that seems black and white, but that there's like different interpretations of those accusations depending on how you look at it. So like a piece of abstract art, one person may describe it one way while somebody else may describe it another way. And I think that that's kind of what we were thinking about with Giovanni's victims. Like, you tell us what this was, we believe you and we'll take you at your word, but that it's so much more complicated than just that.
Yes. Also, I should note, we are talking about Don Giovanni, not Samson and Delilah, which Katy was also doing at the same time.
I was doing 2 shows at once.
I was pulling these images from like files on 2 different shows. Wow. So apologies for not catching that on my slide.
I thought maybe I messed it up. I was like, I would try.
Nah, you're good. You're good. So Francesco, we talk about these in terms of, big picture ideas.
Right.
And then at the same time, in this case, Erhard Rahm, who's the set designer, is working on putting together a model, which in some cases, designers do that both with a physical, literal model and sometimes digitally. And in the digital world, that allows Katy to start to combine her imagery with the set model, and we can start to see how this is going to look over the course of an evening. So here's an example of the first image that folks saw when they walked into Giovanni. Now, this is taken from another artist and another reference point, and we'll talk over the course of this about how we get from here and what you're seeing at the top of the show to some of that imagery that Katy just talked about. But why don't you talk a little bit, Katy, about this particular piece?
Yeah, so this was actually really Erhard's idea that he incorporated and actually told me to project on the scrim with Lauren's approval. But it was a really great idea, and it sort of felt to us like a collection, like this was a collection of Giovanni's women. For the viewer, they're very much like the object of our gaze. Just sort of they're vulnerable and just to be like coveted by presumably mostly men, but anyone. And so that sort of became the sort of the anchor of our projected design, so that like once we have this, we can start to kind of deconstruct it as, we get further and further into the journey of Giovanni, and he's more and more, he's committing more and more atrocities and it's more and more tormented, then we can kind of abstract and break away from this image. But I would say this was sort of like our visual anchor for the design. When you learn,
are all of these things always projected, or there's also video in some of these things, or and how does, just like a quick brief, just because even someone like me, I'm just thinking screen, project, whatever, but It's got to be a little more complicated in that, and then in how you choose, because you really have to become part of the set.
Yeah.
You become a bigger part of the overall visual experience. It's totally. Like adding another. So, how do you think of that? How do you work with how do you know where, when, how? It's got to be director, designer, like it's such a humongous collaboration. Because, and then not only that, it's got to be decided what's going to be a video, what's not, I can't imagine the amount of preparedness and pre-work that it takes to do that, so that you can really just like change what set design and visual experience is. Can you talk a little bit about that and the collaboration and how that works? And you must be intimately involved in the process, and you must know the score. Thank God you played the piano, you set design, you draw, you did stuff in your backyard.
I didn't say well.
But can you talk a little bit about that? Like even just this part to decide a few of those things. It's interesting to know.
Yeah. It is always a massive collaboration with the director and the rest of the design team. And another designer would be the lighting designer. Because I feel like we're always kind of the siblings who sort of can work together and fight each other because we're both working with light.
Right.
And so, you know, if they're too bright, then you can't see what I'm doing. Or if I'm, you know, maybe I'm doing the wrong color and they have something else in mind. So it is extremely collaborative. And this show in particular, we didn't have a lot of time to build the cues. So we met really, really frequently to kind of go through these ideas. So this would have been the first research and stuff that I would share with the team. And then we would all sit around and talk about it and kind of hash out how we wanted to do it. And then in general, most everything I do has movement because like what I think of projection design is that it basically does what sets and lighting can't do, right? So it kind of is the stopgap between those two disciplines. So yeah, here we go. So this was us kind of sitting together in New York, meeting and talking about how we wanted to sort of, what we were going to project, how we were going to light it, how all of these would work together. So this was from the overture.
Yeah, so you'll even hear, like we're in still images, right, Francesco?
Right.
But so we're not seeing video display in this sort of early storyboard, but you can tell that there's going to be movement and change within what Katy's doing, right? So if you look at her first image, yes, it's not a fully saturated, you know, high color piece of art, but there is color within it. And then even as we start to move to this, you go, oh, okay, well, there's more grayscale in there. So we know there's something that's going to connect to movement and transition. And then you're also starting to see that's Erhard's architectural or scenic structure that you're now starting to see there as well, along with figures that Katy and Erhard have dropped in to help give a sense of where actors will be at any time. So this is like only phase one of knowing how it's going to come to life. Is that a fair assessment, Katy?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And, you know, we incorporated this idea of sort of abstract painting and abstraction to the whole production. So what you can't see in this, because I don't think we thought of it yet, but that they're little sketches and drawings that are happening really slowly while the overture is playing, and like kind of slowly erasing away these women as we get pushed into the story. And we see that they're now these women that Lauren has staged in Erhard's towers. So it's like the video becomes the people.
The other thing I want folks to hang on to, if we go back, you know, these images, the research images that Katy was talking about from the victim viewpoint, obviously are in contrast to this image, which is like Giovanni's idealized version of women, and seeing how those two ideas interplay with each other as the evening goes on, so that via her projections, we're knowing whose portion of the story is being told and felt at any different time. Great way to contrast perspectives. So then I thought I would just, there were so many looks for this show. We won't go through them all, but if we look at a couple of different, again, these early storyboards, you can get a sense of how the space shifts, and you can see some of Katy's work and how it manipulates over the course of the evening.
And
so
Katy.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I mean, another thing that I'm always curious about is, I mean, the timing has to be so specific because there's music there. So like, it's not like you can just, so how does that, like, you must be adjusting things in rehearsal the entire time also. And then are there like little loopholes at the end where you're like, okay, if this goes a second longer, I've got this. And then there's like lighting changes and stuff like that. You build a board. I don't know. How does that, like, it's not like you press play at the beginning of the opera and hope to God it works out.
God, no.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely. And I didn't address your earlier question too about the music. I mean, yes, I will have to listen, I get to listen to whatever the opera is tons and tons and tons of times, because I can read music, but not that well, but I have to be able to in order to write. Your secret's safe with me.
Thank you.
In order to cue, like, when these things happen, because it is an opera. Everything is musically driven. Like, that is what people come. They don't come to see project. Some people care about music, apparently.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
So it's like that, and the maestro that you guys are driving force, right? So, and every maestro will conduct something differently. Everybody will play it and sing it differently. So our hymnal is the score. And so I'll listen to it, and Lauren will have ideas, of course, and we'll have certain musical moments that we'll want to hit.
Right.
And so you have to design with, like, if it's a video that plays, you have to design it with enough, like you said, leg at the end so that you don't run out before the next cue happens. And so, I've listened to it so many times to really have an idea of how long I really have,
Right.
But yeah, that was a big learning curve when I first started doing it, was like, how the heck do you time all this? How do you put this all together? And it's hugely collaborative with the lighting designers and everyone.
To Katy's, to even credit you a little more, and this is going to be a great example between these next two slides, she's not only timing to music, but in this case, and it's true, I think, with many set designs, there were so many moving pieces that she's also timing what's hitting when each piece is moving, that is correlating in its own way to the music. So, there's a whole intricate choreographed system between what the crew is doing with scenic pieces, what the lighting team is doing with their cues, what you're doing in the pit, maestro, what the cast is doing with what Katy's doing. I mean, it's incredible. And if you look for a second at this image, which shows some of that abstraction related artwork that Katy's initial inspiration from, and then you take a look at this next slide. This is the Act 1 finale of Giovanni. You're suddenly seeing, oh, okay, that image we saw way back at the top of the show is now as if it's Giovanni's mural or artwork in his home. So now I'm seeing, okay, those women connect to Giovanni. When I'm seeing these other images, it's how those women are getting destroyed. So we're starting to put that connective tissue together for folks.
So how do you, so even on this, like, are you projecting from behind, or how do you shape it so that it's like, is there like a lens you got to build that's like that weird shape?
Great question.
Something, whatever. How in the world do you even do that?
Yeah. I mean,
I got to stare at it all the time, so I got to ask all the questions. So.
On this particular production, we had 4 projectors in the back hitting that rear projection screen. So it's kind of like a plastic. And then from the front, we had, I think, 4 or 6 projectors that had to go at different angles because, light can't pass through a solid object. So you have to go around some of these. I know, it's crazy. You can't curb physics, but you have to go around these certain angles. But I had, it's 100% not me by myself. I had an absolutely remarkable team of crew that worked with me on the projections. Yeah. Sean McNally and April King at Washington National Opera. And they're the ones that make me look like I'm okay. They help with the cueing the projections on what's called a media server, and then helping me work out, the angles, because they know the house so well, they know their equipment so well. So we kind of all work out together, like how we're going to make these shots and how we're going to program it so that it, can basically align at different focal points.
So do you have to have different people running different projecting systems?
We have
on a computer, or do you have one whole program that does everything?
Yeah, we have one whole program that, basically it's one whole program that we cue everything on, and that when I leave, they run it on. But the way that this is too in depth, but the way that they helped put this system together, it did something that the system doesn't normally do. But yeah, it's like really beefy computers that projectors plug into, and they communicate with and tell them what to do where and when.
So it's not just space bar.
But that's how you run it. You're right. Yeah. It's basically
great questions and comments coming in on a couple of different feeds. So some of them I can bring up and show, and some of them I'll have to talk you through. Julia Hammond, who's on a feed that I can't show at the moment, she's saying, wow, these images are incredible, Katy. Do you feel that the use of video in opera can be used for period costume / staging, or does it require a modernized production? And this is a great show to talk about that with. Thoughts on that, Katy?
I think you can use it with anything. And with this show, that was a real challenge. We had period costumes and a contemporary set. So I think projection really helped. I mean, tie kind of those two worlds together. Because you can't just all of a sudden have people in these like period costumes without kind of honoring it somehow, like bringing in elements of that. And that's largely why we went with this mural that was painted. I can't remember the artist, and I should know. But it was painted in roughly the same period that the show takes place, which is one of the reasons why we chose it.
Right.
But I've also seen, Katy, I've seen your work that is purely for modern, new, contemporary opera with a whole, design approach that is modern and contemporary, and the projections fit right in there. And I've seen your projections work with, a purely traditional staging of Giovanni with a very architectural, period specific, scenic and costume design. And I think it can enhance that as well. So if you've got a brilliant designer like Katy, Julia, the answer is yes, it can work. Corinne Hayes, who is the assistant director on the production that we're talking about right now, also just said, shout out to Local 22, and she is not wrong. The crew there was phenomenal at helping make the projections for this particular world come to life.
Absolutely.
Now, show this question from Veronica. She's saying, do you ever have issues with unexpected tempos compared to what you've listened to and then what the final product is? And how do you handle that if there are very different tempos in actual rehearsal performance?
Conductors are the worst.
I know. Oh my gosh.
Unreliable.
They could just conduct to the CD I listened to when I did it.
Pianist.
Yes, that is always an issue. What I usually will do is ask the director, the maestro, what version I should listen to, which they feel relates to their style the most or what they're most inspired by. But the way that we get around that is that we write a lot of cues, and basically cues are when something happens. Right. So it's like a light could change, a video could change.
Right.
We add a lot of those in the score with musical placements so that a maestro can do whatever they want. And we know that we're going to do what we want when when it's intended to happen. In the tech process, we'll get to run it a few times with the maestro. And I think, it's pretty consistent once you get into the space and hear it all together. So the timings are pretty close at that point, but that's when we'll really adjust like fade times and stuff when we hear it live and hear it when it's actually performed. So yes, that happens a lot. And it's actually a really fun challenge, I think, to the job.
So
and it just shows you how much maestros
have control.
If you don't understand it, you're like, wow, you really can do a completely different interpretation of a piece.
Yes, I can.
Yes,
yes, I can.
So I thought, Katy and Francesco, I would just take us quickly through a few of the last images here, again, just to see how your work can influence itself over the course of a piece. But then I know people are going to say, okay, but how do you even make those images? So let's take this one step at a time. This was the graveyard scene.
Yes.
And then we're headed into the Act 2 finale. So again, you're seeing abstraction coming into play, the commendatore's arrival. We're seeing how the graveyard and hell and commendatore all start to come together. There's tons of movement in video through all of this, which again is that next step, Francesco, that you were asking about earlier. And then of course, in this particular production, the chandelier burst into flames, and Giovanni went down into hell from there. So this, like we said, this is just her storyboard, right? So then once we think all approved and we're headed in the right direction, then that goes back to that question of, okay, well, how do you get that to start to come to life? And I thought what might be good to show that, Katy, is a bit of what you shared with me yesterday, which is just looking at how you can manipulate an image, which will show a little bit of what Maestro, I think, is looking for in terms of explanation. So here, for example, I'll let Katy talk through these as I open them.
Oh, yeah. So I just did a quick reference so thinking about Lucia and thinking about the forest, right? So this is a stock photo, right? Something that I get from one of my sites that is rights free, so that I don't get sued for using it in a production.
That's always great.
Yeah, I prefer that usually.
Yes, a good choice.
Yeah, I dislike getting sued. You know, this may start with something that I will go and photograph. I did not photograph this. I wish I had. So this is sort of the starting point. We're like, this is a really beautiful image. This is spooky. Lauren will like it. It's in the color palette we've talked about. Then I go through a series of different filters and things that I use. This I generated this on Photoshop with a certain filter that basically emulates like silk screening. You can go to the next one. So I do a lot of different
Working. There we go.
There we are. A lot of different layers of different effects. Next, this is the same program. This, I was trying to do sort of an aged photograph kind of a feel. Next. And then I also wanted to give it a...
There we go.
Oh, and then this is also to give it kind of a stipple texture. So I generated this. Next. And then I felt like, because it is, you know, we're referencing like the 1830s roughly. I wanted something that felt a little bit more painterly. So I generated this, and because I was a painter.
Yeah, I think that's, oh, no. Oh, the video might show. I don't know if this is gonna...
And then I will take all of those into the program that I use called After Effects. And I'll use a series of they're called blending modes, but they just change how the colors relate to each other. And so
you make video from stills that you combine.
Exactly.
You can do anything like that.
Yeah. Exactly. And then, you know, you want some movement, not to distract from what's happening on stage, but you want just like a little bit of that kind of spooky, hazy, foggy stuff. So I added the fog into like the layers of some of the stippling.
Yeah,
but
cool.
We were looking at some of the original illustrations done of Lucia, the early set design. That was sort of our reference.
Wow. So it can be like, even to get like 1 minute or 30 seconds of video can be like hours and hours and hours of work and filter finding and all of that. And
totally.
And figuring out the timing and the look and aesthetic. I mean, it must take hours and hours.
It does.
Probably longer than it took Donizetti to compose that section.
he did it in a couple days.
No offense or anything. Just saying. He was very fast. Just saying.
Was he?
Paper pen. Oh, yeah. Oh, Donizetti wrote like 68 operas or whatever it was. Died super young. Yeah. 68, 69. Oh, Tony Baresi would kill me. I don't know this number. But yeah.
So then, you know, so that's a bit of the background, right? So, you know, we have the storyboard. You can sort of see a little bit of what her process is like. Then I thought I would show us a clip. Katy, this is from your Sydney production of The Flying Dutchman, which just will give you, everybody who's watching today, and give us a sense of, okay, so she's done this video work. In theory, we know what it looks like. What does it actually look like when you put it on the stage?
Yeah.
Here's a reference point for all of us. Just a little hint.
Funny about that is that there's like 80 cues that happen actually in the real show with that music, and I was like,
wow.
But Yeah, that's an example. Eric Owens was the Dutchman in that production. So he was kind enough, I lived in Brooklyn then, and he was kind enough to come to my hot apartment and let me film him so I could incorporate him as the Dutchman.
So that's his actual face in the video.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say that out loud because not only has what Katy done is figure out all the imagery, all the movement, timed it so that you can see that with the music, but she's also taking actors, which we did in Giovanni as well, actually, like for the story and things like that. And you're photographing them and incorporating them into the work as well.
Totally.
Do you find that's important for like the connection? Or is there a time when you think maybe something totally different would be appropriate? I love seeing the actual people in the actual video that I'm actually going to see on stage, but is there...
Yes.
That's just me. Could be a time where it's like you want someone totally different. I don't know.
Depends on
Yeah, I mean, I've done that before, and I didn't do a very good job. I did a Tristan and Isolde, and I feel I didn't get it right. And I used different people than the singers that were in the production. And in that particular circumstance, I don't think it worked, but I think it can work other times. I think,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's really powerful when you have the person that you're actually seeing on stage incorporated.
In the right costume or makeup or whatever.
Exactly. As long as it's not like distracting and pulling away from what you're, physically watching.
In Lucia, are you going to have just the conductor cam so that every once in a while I can just be on the...
You can just be lording over everyone.
We were going to, I mean, I guess now's
Do
a
you
good
need
time
to
to tell
video
you.
my face?
That's
that
all
way
we're
I can
doing
just come across the screen?
Yes.
Oh my God, that'd be so great.
There you go. There's the design.
See?
The cat's out of the bag. That's what we're doing for
olive skin color palette. Got it.
So that's not only who Katy is when she's doing shows on stage, but the pandemic has leveled up, I think, and made us all think creatively and outside of the box. And so how her work is then being seen in purely digital or virtual formats is a world I want to talk about a little bit. And then also how we're now recombining, which sort of gets us back to Lucia and some of the other projects that you've been working on in the last couple of months, Katy. So what I'd love to show next is some work that you did with Glimmerglass over the course of the summer. And this is actually another Wagner. This is Defane. And it was originally supposed to be a full production in last summer's season prior to the pandemic. Talk a little bit, Katy, about your conversations with Glimmerglass, with Francesca, which resulted in this next clip that I'm going to show.
Yeah, so Francesca still wanted to do a version of Defane, and since it is, sort of a fairy tale, it is a fairy tale. We thought it would be appropriate that it could be like sort of a shortened, condensed version of the story. That we could do it sort of inspired by Lottie Redinger's puppets, like cut out paper puppets. And so Kelly Rourke wrote a reduced version along with the maestro of the score. And so we did like a 20-minute telling of that story. And Constance Hoffman was the costume designer for that production that was supposed to take place. So we worked with her to come up with like the character design. And so my associate Blake Mans and I kind of animated this whole story so that the audiences could have some, a taste of what they were missing that season from Defane. So what happened is they recorded the maestro playing the shortened version of it, and then the singers sang it, and the audio guy mixed it all together for us, and then we animated this fairy tale to go along with it.
That's awesome.
And the reason I want to show this clip is because a lot of what the opera world has been talking about is how, conductors are now becoming studio conductors. You're getting used to how to record and do recording sessions along with your musicians. Stage directors are now turning into film directors. Projection designers are now just literally putting together animated films, which are not just for the stage, but to be consumed digitally. And I want people to pay attention. I made a specific choice here to show the very beginning of this promotional video from Glimmerglass, because even though the beginning's just credits, it's just credits, not over the music of the opera yet. Katy had to design all of this too. So it's just the layer of what you have to think about to even put something on digitally, takes on a new scope and new focus. So check out Katy and Glimmerglass's work from Defane.
Once there was a prince named Arundel who seemed to have everything a man could want. A place he knew very well, or so he thought. When he emerged, both the forest and the deer had been transformed.
Wow.
Oh, that was really fun. It was a huge learning curve because, I don't do character animations really. I have no aspirations, thankfully, to be an animator.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard, when you design projections for stage, you have all this other stuff to look at that you're not so much the focal point, right? You're just playing along with everyone else. So for these sorts of projects, it was really intimidating and stressful to be like the visual element that people are looking at.
It's amazing, though. It looks so cool.
Oh, thank you.
And so now we're in this world where I'm going to give a next shout out to Houston Grand Opera. Where I have been working this fall, and also Katy has been working throughout the HGO digital season. And part of the environment that many companies are headed back into are concert performances. For Houston, they're doing them and they're presenting them digitally. So we're going to show a clip from your most recent production with them. Do you want to say anything about Suite Español, Katy?
Sure. It was a collaboration with the director Chia Patino, and Ana Maria Martinez sort of created it and thought of it and sang it. But the idea was sort of to take people on a journey across Spain. And so I don't think you're showing this portion of it, but I would do little videos in between each of the performance pieces that you're about to see to kind of give context to the region of Spain that we were focusing on. This was all done, this was recorded in a theater, and I controlled all of it from the comfort of my office here in beautiful Beacon, New York.
Wow.
And so I was
Beacon. Shout out to Beacon.
No lighthouse. And I was remote desktopping into a computer that's in Houston, with like a camera feed of the theater and like controlling everything and talking to my colleagues on my cell phone, but they're in the theater on a comm.
So you're basically a hacker.
I'm a hacker.
You're a hacker.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Basically, you're a hacker.
A very poor hacker.
Well, let's take a look at some of this stunning hacked work, shall we? right. So
I
also
love Anna Maria.
shout out
She's wonderful.
To the accompanist in that piece, to Kevin Miller.
Yay.
Yay, Kevin! Yay!
Here with us. And also, of course, to the dancers and to Anna Maria and everybody at HGO. That really, for me, it has leveled up the whole concert game, how that work came together. So what I learned from working with Katy this fall was that we can figure out a way to incorporate her even while she's still from afar. And that's actually the trick that we're going to do for Lucia. So what we're figuring out is how to incorporate Katy's productions from her still being in New York all the way down, hacking into our systems here at the Tobin.
Hacker.
And, I think we're in for a real treat. Now in Lucia, well, that'll be different than anything you've seen so far in terms of our presentation today. The orchestra will be on stage. The singers will be in front of them. There will be a projection screen overhead that incorporates Katy's work. And it is a live performance with an audience. So in some ways, we're incorporating all of the different things that we've been looking at in terms of visual resources to make this concert come to life. And Katy, I'm just going to speak for everybody in the world and say you're amazing, and we're thrilled to have you with us.
You guys are amazing, and I am so excited to make my San Antonio debut. I wish I was there in person, but really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be so awesome. So I cannot thank you enough, Katy, for being with us today to help describe some of that behind the scenes building process that gets us really from concept into production. I also cannot wait to see how it all comes to life. And I'm hoping our audience today can't wait as well. We hope everyone watching, whether you're joining us live or watching later on one of our channels, we hope you'll be able to join us for a performance on May 6th or May 8th. And newsflash, this just in, we did just receive a very generous sponsorship from HEB, who will be helping to make a live stream of our May 8th performance possible.
Yay!
Yay, fantastic.
Yeah, so thank you, HEB.
Thank you, HEB.
Details on that live stream will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So even if you're not here in San Antonio, you can also watch the production from afar, which is going to be a real treat and a real feather in our caps, I think, here
just
in
hack
San
in. I mean,
you can just hack in.
Just hack in.
Text me, I'll tell you how.
Stay tuned. We'll give you lots of details. So coming up in the next couple of weeks, we will be gearing up for Lucia. We're going to continue to include artists like Francesco and Katy in our upcoming Beyond the Production series, so that everybody watching can get a chance to get to know our cast and our artists as we gear up for performances. So like I said, we hope you'll join us. If you're interested in getting tickets, it's as easy as going to operasa.org, and you can head to our performances page and find out more about the extraordinary artists we're talking about and also how to purchase tickets. Katy, thank you. We love you. You're amazing.
Love you guys.
Thank you.
This was really fun. Thank you.
Thank you, as always, Francesco, for being my partner in crime.
Of course.
Stay tuned, audience, and we will be back in the next few weeks with another Beyond the Production. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.